welcome to Senior Matters. I'm Sharon Rice, and I'm the director of the Wareham Council on Aging. And I'm very pleased to welcome our guest today, David Burek, who is the Assistant Director for the New Bedford branch of the Department for Transitional Assistance, otherwise known as DTA. For those of you not aware, DTA is the state agency that oversees the SNAP program, which is going to be the topic of discussion today. So thank you, David, for making time for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So SNAP, tell us about it. What is it? What is the program?
So SNAP, formerly known as the Food Stamp Department, is the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. It is a federally funded and regulated program that is administered by each state. And really its purpose is to assist low-income eligible families with their food and nutritional needs. It can be a small payment or stipend payment to help with offsetting the cost of nutritional food.
Okay. So you mentioned low income, which is pretty much what I would guess you need to be in order to qualify. But is that the only criteria you look at? Do you have to have like a super low income to be eligible, or do you factor in other things?
Sure. So there's many kind of factors into the calculation on who's eligible for benefits or not. It can be complex at times, but there are different income guidelines. It's mainly based off of a household's total income level. So that could be a household of one. It could be a household of many, depending on if there's others that live in the household, children, spouses, things of that nature, as well as eligible deductions. So things like rent, utilities, medical expenses, which is obviously a big factor for the population that we're speaking about today.
Exactly.
as well as a few other factors. But it's mainly based off of household income and eligible deductions.
Okay, awesome. So let's just say someone wants to apply. What I always find documentation gathering is a pretty daunting task. So what is it that folks need to, before they make that first outreach, what kind of information should they gather and have at the ready before they either make the call or do whatever? Sure.
So to apply for SNAP benefits for us, really it's basic information. Really it's name, kind of date of birth, a good address, a good working cell phone number or landline number, and then if the household has any income and if they have any expenses. I would always recommend, and I think it's a good idea to try to get as much documentation as you can ahead of time. So if that means somebody's working, then like copies of pay stubs or things of that nature. If there's medical expenses, trying to maybe get that together, whether it's a printout from their local pharmacy of maybe like a year to date of kind of the expenses. If they have medical related travel expenses, they can kind of have that ahead of time. It's certainly not required to apply. It's just that basic information that I initially talked about that we need to put on an application to kind of get the process rolling. But the more you have up front is going to make things the easier route.
Right. So if somebody's missing a key piece of information, I mean, obviously not their name or kind of contact information you talked about, but maybe they don't have all their medical bills, they can still start the process and then continue to gather stuff at a later time and still to complete the application.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yep. It's that basic information for the initial point of contact for us to start the application process. And then there's kind of processes in place and where we'll tell you what you need, if you need anything, if you haven't already gathered, that information and sent it in ahead of time.
Okay, great. So we talked about starting the process. So I know there's numerous ways that people can get the ball rolling. And everybody has kind of different needs and abilities. Sure. So could you just describe some of the ways that people who are interested in applying, where can they go or how could they get that first initial ball rolling, so to speak?
Sure. So one of the definitely unique ways or things about DTA is there's multiple ways to apply for benefits, which is great. We're about accessibility and we've got multiple accessible ways to apply. So the fastest and one of the definitely most efficient is doing an online web application. So you can go to mass.gov, you can go to dtaconnect.com, you can fill out a online web application, again, with just sort of your basic information. It'll electronically come over to DTA, and we'll kind of take it from there. We'll begin the application process. Folks can fill out a regular paper application. They could either mail it to us to our PO box, or they could fax it to us at DTA. Same thing, we would take it from there and we would start the application process. For seniors, we do have a simplified, what we call Senior Snap app, which is not quite as long as a regular, Snap applications. It's got kind of simplistic information that we're asking for. So I would definitely recommend that for the population that we're talking about today. Our office is located in New Bedford. If anybody is able to and in the area and wants to come down to the office, they can certainly apply in office, either on the available kiosks that we have at DTA or in person.
Do you take walk-ins, or do they have to schedule an appointment?
We take walk-ins.
Okay.
So we were open 8 to 5 to the public, Monday through Friday, excluding holidays. And anybody can walk in at any time, and they can choose to apply. We also have an assistance line number, a main assistance line number, as well as a senior assistance line number, where folks can contact that number and they could apply over the phone. We do what's called electronic phone signatures. So if somebody wanted to apply, they wouldn't necessarily have to physically fill out an application. Worker would go through the application on the phone with the client. The client would sort of give the information, and then we have a recording that the client would listen to over the phone, and they basically would hit 1 if they agree to the terms, 2 if they disagree to the terms. Those are really kind of the main ways to apply. Oh, I should also mention, we also have outreach partners that have DTA kiosks. Wareham Council on Aging being one, that folks can fill out an application through the kiosk that will come to us as well.
Okay. So for our viewers, I will just kind of interject here. Normally, the Council on Aging has an outreach coordinator who is happy to sit down with seniors and actually help them fill out the application. Generally, we do it online and just help get the ball rolling, make copies if you need it. Currently, we are in the process of filling this position, and I am very optimistic that we're going to have someone in place very soon, but we don't have a person yet. We do have the kiosk, as David mentioned. And the other thing that it's a big secret, well, it shouldn't be a big secret, but is the senior, I call it the senior hotline. If you need to call DTA for any reason, you can call the senior line, which is shorter waiting period, and these folks are really dedicated to seniors. And that number is 833-712-8027. So that is just a really valuable number to tuck aside for when you need it. It'll just get you to, a live person a lot quicker.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a dedicated staff, dedicated unit to our elderly and disabled population. So it's like you said, it's a little easier to get through. It's not as long wait times. They do, call folks back.
That's a good concept.
It's definitely an easier route to take for a population that certainly needs the attention. So
yeah, absolutely. So that's a great perk to have. So take us through the process. Once that initial application goes in, then what happens?
Sure. So it sort of depends on how somebody applies, but generally speaking, I mean, with any application, it's going to make its way to a eligibility worker, whether it was submitted through a web app, whether it was a paper application that somebody came in and dropped off at the office, or scanned in, or faxed, or what have you. Once a worker receives that application, we are required to interview the applicant. So we will attempt to make initial contact with the client, which is why a good working phone number is an essential piece to that application. Without that, it's going to make it very, very difficult for us to make an initial contact. So generally speaking, we would do 2 what we call cold calls to the client. So we'll call out to the client on whatever number that they listed to try to reach them. We'll ask them if it's a good time to be interviewed. Depending on the situation, sort of dictates the length of the interview. But, generally speaking, they can be, probably completed within 20 minutes to a half hour. But again, it kind of depends on the situation. We'll kind of go over the information that was listed on the application, as well as ask some clarifying or some additional questions. Sometimes maybe we missed something on an application, somebody didn't check a box off.
Right.
Didn't.
Easy to happen. Yeah.
Exactly. So once an interview takes place, if we don't need anything else to process the case, we would simply submit the case for approval. That doesn't happen quite often unless somebody has maybe been, ahead of the game and kind of sent their stuff in with their application, or maybe they've been on before and we kind of have, some items that we already need. We do have some internal systems that we match with different agencies that we can kind of get some information on ourselves, so we wouldn't necessarily need it.
Right, like Social Security, one of those.
Social Security, so
you don't need them to actually get their Social Security earnings statement.
For the most part, no. We usually match with them frequently and can kind of get up the most recent and up to date numbers. I won't say it's 100% all the time. So in a rare circumstance, we may need something, or there could be something being garnished out of the payment that we need some clarification on, or something like that. But generally speaking, we can access that information. If we did, in fact, not have everything we needed to, approve the case right after the interview, the worker would basically tell the client on the phone, these are the things that we're going to need from you in order to process your case. We would then follow that up with a mailing of a checklist of those things that we talked about. Each item would have a pretty significant breakdown of like the things you could submit that would satisfy whatever that check mark or checkbox item would be. Once we receive those items back, again, we would kind of move forward with processing that case, submitting it for approval. Every application, we have to have either an approval or a denial within 30 days of the initial date of application. So at most, 30 days is sort of the time frame where you will hear one way or another, and then we will kind of take it from there. There's some ability, depending on if a case wasn't approved by day 30, depending on what it wasn't approved for, there can be some additional time frame where a client can kind of get as the remaining items, and we can sort of reopen a case, and they wouldn't necessarily have to reapply.
Right.
But that is generally, in kind of a nutshell, the process.
Okay. And so if someone is, once that application is complete, then and approved, basically you can't do anything till you have the card, right? The EBT card is what the recipient needs to be able to utilize the program. So is that something that's like given immediately, or is there, if you're in need of food, you'd like to have this pretty quickly. So from the time that the process is approved to when they have a card in their hand, and I assume you do that by mail, right?
So yeah, there's a couple of different ways we can do it. Again, if they're in the area at a local office, whether it's New Bedford or one of our other 21 additional offices statewide, they can walk into the office and have a card printed for them, and they could walk out that same day with a card. Generally speaking, most we mail. Once we approve a case, or we have what's called expedited benefits, depending on if you qualify for those or not, which are sort of like a little bit of a holdover benefit until we can fully process your application. And there's some different criteria for those, but the worker doing the interview with you would be able to kind of discuss that and see if you qualified for that. We'd mail out a card. Generally speaking, it takes a few days. Obviously, if it's kind of on the bookend of a weekend or a holiday, it might take a little longer. But generally speaking, it's a few days, and you would have that card in the mail. there is a PIN number associated with each card. It's unique to each card and each individual. Each individual can change that PIN number to a PIN number that suits them. Those mailings come separately. So a card would come in one letter from DTA. Your PIN number will come in a separate.
It makes sense for security reasons.
Yep.
So if someone is approved, then what happens? Do they have to renew every year, every couple of years? How does that go?
So again, depends on the situation, but specific to the population we're speaking about today, generally if the case is, everybody on the case is elderly or federally certified as disabled, DTA puts them on what's called EDSAP. It's just our internal
government acronym
for our recertification process for this population. And what that is a 24-month recertification process. So basically, it means you'll be approved for 24 months. At the 12-month mark, we'll mail you something, basically just asking if anything's changed. It's usually pretty simplistic. It's kind of just a yes/no check mark box for each individual item. So, did my name change? Did my address change? Did my income change? You would check yes or no. You'd send it back to us, and we kind of would continue on with that certification process until we hit that 24-month mark. At that 24-month mark, we basically would require an additional interview at that point. We'll mail you another form, and that one will require an interview where we're basically just going to check back in with you and say, hey, have things changed? If they have, we're going to need, additional verification, or if nothing's changed, we're going to kind of move on and process your case, and we'll be on for an additional 24 months after that.
Oh, great. So it's pretty smooth once you get through the initial application. So looking at the other side of things, so if someone is denied for whatever reason, what are their options? Are they able to, I know medical expenses are really a big part of the process, and it's a pain, right? I mean, just be honest, it's a pain to gather all those records. So if somebody maybe neglected to include stuff because they figured, oh, I got enough, and are they able to reapply? Or if someone's, say, household composition changes, if they, a child moves out, or they lose a spouse or whatever, or they lose their job, are they able to reapply? Do they have to wait a certain amount of time, or how does that work?
Yeah, so generally speaking, for an application that's denied, there isn't a waiting period for needing to reapply. As I mentioned before, depending on what the application was denied for, there may be some additional time after that denial to get us what we need. So if it were denied because, say, for example, you were you're working and you didn't send us your pay stubs, there would be some additional time where if you do send us your pay stubs, you're not going to have to reapply because you kind of gave us what we need to finish processing in this case. Again, it depends on what it's denied for, and it'll kind of determine that. But a worker and that checklist that we mail out to you would be able to kind of explain the timeframes on those. As far as circumstances changing, I would say any updated information is good for us to know, because it could be very beneficial to your case, the amount that you're receiving, or if you were approved or denied. So, particularly medical expenses, whether it's a one-time, occurrence, an ambulance ride, something like that, or if it's something that's reoccurring, if it's, prescriptions or eyeglasses or travel expenses because I have to go to Boston for different doctor's appointments. If that frequency changed, the amount of time going, the amount of money, we want to have the most up-to-date information because we want you to have the most up-to-date benefit amount. So I would strongly recommend that those things are shared with us so that we can update the case accordingly. If there is also an appeal process with DTA, if anybody ever felt like we calculated something, incorrectly, or we didn't use the information that, was talked about or given or things like that, there is an option for kind of appealing a denial of a case as well. And that gets mailed out with a denial notice if the case were denied.
All right, so folks would know how to
yes, yep, it'll explain the process. Going. Yep, absolutely.
Okay, great. So you'd mentioned earlier that the PIN and the card come in separate envelopes for, I'm sure, for security reasons. And, seniors in particular seem to be prime targets for scammers. It's just horrible out there. So what kind of advice do you have for folks who are, accepted onto the program to help try to keep their account safe? And what should they do if they have been, I'm going to use the word hacked, it could be scammed. I don't know if there's really a distinction there, but, what do they do if the worst happens and they're, their card, they go to use their card and it's been cleaned out?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, if anybody's unsure of any information that they're receiving from DTA, whether it's by phone call, text message, mail, that they should contact us. If they feel like it's not something legitimate or they have questions on it, contact us, at the number that you provided, as well as the other assistance line number that we have for sort of our main flow of traffic. And we can certainly clarify anything like that. I will say that DTA will never ask for personal information via text messages. So if folks are getting a text message from what seems to be DTA, and we're asking for, say, like a social security number, or what's your EBT card number, or what's your PIN to your EBT card number, that those should definitely be reported, because we will not ask for that information in that capacity.
Right, and you probably already have the social security number, and you've got their,
exactly.
Their
there may be
number.
some rare instances where we need to clarify some things, but that will happen over phone by us, reaching out. That'll never happen in an email or a text message or anything, like that. As far as some recommendations, I would say, don't share your card with anybody. Don't share your card number or your PIN number with folks. That's certainly one of the biggest instances we see where cards are misused because they've given it to somebody else to use, or I gave them my PIN number and somebody's kind of taken it upon themselves to maybe take advantage of the situation, and we obviously don't want that. If folks want somebody else to have access to their case, DTA has processes for that. We have paperwork. We have forms that can be filled out where somebody can have an assisting person, or what we call an authorized rep, which means I can select somebody to have authorization to access my benefits. They would get their own separate card with their own separate PIN number, but it would be linked to that person's account. I would definitely recommend that for anybody who maybe somebody does the grocery shopping for them, or things of that nature. The other thing I would recommend is frequent inquiry balances checks. So there's a customer service number on the back of their EBT card. If you call that, you can get an up-to-date balance of what's on your card. So if you ever suspect there's anything going on, or even if you want to sort of just keep track of where things are, I would check that periodically. And if you notice anything, out of the ordinary, I would again certainly report that to DTA. We do have it. Let me back up. If somebody does experience fraud, obviously DTA needs to know right away. I would certainly recommend filing a police report, letting DTA know, and then we do have some limited capacity, depending on the situation, to potentially replace some of the SNAP benefits. Yeah. And we have a processes, that we can go through to kind of look into that and hopefully be able to kind of put some of that stuff back. So,
so call your local police and call the senior hotline, as I like to refer to it.
Yes, yes, yep. And notify us, and we can kind of direct you as needed on what the best course of action is at that point, and if maybe you could be eligible for maybe some replacement benefits and things like that.
Okay, great. So one of the, or I should say two of the kind of lesser known benefits to being a SNAP recipient are the HIP program and the Museums for All program. And I think these are really awesome. the food, obviously, the food assistance is the critical part, but these are kind of just little extras that many people aren't aware of. So could you just talk a little bit about those two programs for folks?
So the HIP program is our Healthy Incentive Program. Essentially, it is approved farmers markets and things of that sort where folks can use their DTA benefits at approved farmer markets for local vegetables and fruits, and it will give you a kickback on your benefits. There are sort of caps depending on your family size. I think it's $40, $60, and $80 depending on what your family size is. But if I were to use some of those benefits at an approved farmers markets, I essentially would immediately get those benefits back on my card immediately to use again. It's a great way to stretch out a benefit amount, a great way to kind of support local and get some good healthy food. It will show up on the receipt, so if you use it as at an approved farmers market, the receipt that kicks back once you use it will list the HIP program, how much you used, how much you were eligible, and how much was just put right back on your card. And it is supposed to be immediate, so you should be able to again then be able to use that amount, pretty much right away, which is great.
Yeah, that is the HIP program, I think, is just totally awesome. One of the challenges for folks is trying to find a farmer in February. It might be a little difficult. So I'm actually really proud to say we work at the Wareham Council on Aging. We work with the UMass Extension program to bring a farmer once a month, year-round, to the Council on Aging. So she is an approved vendor. She's it's called Patty's Patch out of Middleborough, and she comes one Friday a month. And we have so many folks that come. They use it as part of the HIP program. Some just use the regular SNAP benefits if they've however it works. And then we have, she takes cash and credit cards too, but it's just a great way for folks to, as you said, stretch that dollar, get good quality food, support Patty on her lean months when, farms are not that robust at this time of year, but she does bring a lot of good stuff and variety changes every month. So, so if folks are interested in knowing when Patty comes to the Council on Aging, you can check our newsletter. It's certainly in there, or you could give the Council on Aging a call and we'll let you know when she comes so that you can definitely don't waste this benefit. It's really a great thing.
Absolutely. Mass.gov, our DTA site as well. We have what's called a finder as well, and if you put in your local area, it will tell you all approved HIP vendors in your zip code or area that you're searching for too. Okay. And it'll give you the hours, where they're located, if they're seasonal, what months they're there, all kind of that kind of stuff too. So it's a good resource for folks that want to utilize it. Yeah, it's great.
And the museum program, how does that work?
Yes, so we partner with several different organizations. Essentially, for qualified museums and other organizations, being a SNAP and DTA recipient can get you to either have free or reduced price on admission to museums and other sort of culturally appropriate places. Again, our website, mass.gov, it will list all of the different places throughout the state that sort of utilize this benefit. It's great. There's no kind of restriction on how many times you can use it or anything like that. But it's a good way to kind of get a discounted entry or free entry to several different sites and museums and things like that.
Not sure if you know the answer to this, but if a grandparent were to bring a grandchild with them, do they both get in for free, or is it just one person?
I'd have to look, but I believe that it would work that way.
Okay, and it would be spelled out on the mass.gov site.
Yes, and each organization kind of has its own, sort of rules with it. Some, like I said, some are free, some are discounted, some, so the best course of action, I think, would be to use, mass.gov and really check that organization that you're, planning to visit first, and it should spell out sort of what the restrictions or no restrictions are for, using it at that site.
Yeah, awesome. So those are just really wonderful little extras that you get for, just for using the benefits. So it's a great thing. So thank you, David. This has been really informative. Before we go, is there anything we didn't touch upon that you think that folks need to know about? Any elements of the SNAP program or just in general?
No, I think, really that we're here to help. I mean, we're here to serve the public. We're here to answer your questions. We're here to try to help folks through, difficult times. So, please reach out. Please, call the number. See us if you're in the area, and we'll help you try to guide you through the process. The other thing I did want to mention too is that DTA does offer some utilization of EBT for online food orders as well. So
Really? Okay.
There are several, local grocery stores and throughout the state that you can use your EBT card for online grocery order.
So getting it delivered to your home. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, that's excellent.
So or pickup, either or. So you can find a full list of those on DTA and mass.gov. Also, why it's very, very important not to give folks your card number or your PIN number because they could access and do an order for themselves or for the wrong intentions.
Right, without even having the card.
Without even having the card.
Yeah, good point. Good point. So, well, thank you so much. It's really great to have you here and have all this wonderful information. For our viewers at home, I just want to give a couple of numbers again. So the senior hotline, what is it? The senior
assistance line.
Senior assistance line. The number to call is 833-712-8027. Or you can always call the Council on Aging here in Wareham, and our number is 508-291-3130. So that's 3130. And we're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 3. So thank you at home for tuning in, and we will see you again soon. Thank you.